Hello and welcome. This is Ensuring Success, and we are coming to you live from AMS Pictures in Dallas, Texas. And one of these sessions we're going to have to all say live from Dallas, but we won't do that this time. So I'm Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor magazine. And before we go any further, I would like to thank all of our sponsors who are making this event possible. And that includes Peisner Johnson, Receipt Bank, Sage, Zero, Avalara, Boomer Consulting, Canopy, CPA.com, eFile4Biz.com, and Intuit Pro Connect. So thank you to all of them. We wouldn't be here without you. Also, next I would like to mention the CPE process for those of you who are just joining us, and apologize for those of you who've already heard this 6 times. So for CPE credit, we will post 3 different numbers at the bottom of your screen. Each number is a 3-digit number. We'll post them 3 different times. So first number, and then a little bit later the second number, and a little bit later the third 3-digit number. You need to write down all of those numbers. And at the end of the day, when you've finished all of your sessions, you'll go to the Get Your CE/CPE Credit tab at the very top of the screen you're on right now. And when you click that at the end of the day, you'll see a list of all the sessions, and you can enter the CPE codes for everyone you attended and get your CPE credit, or your certificate. That's how it works. Also, we'd like you to connect with us during this session and the rest of the conference. And so there are a couple ways you can do that. First of all, through social media. We are on Twitter at DecemberCPE, #DecemberCPE. And we're on Facebook at the CPA Practice Advisor Facebook page. So you can find us in both of those places. If you have questions, technical issues, anything like that, you can email us at info@ensuringsuccess.com. And finally, we'd like to really communicate with you, and we're going to have some polling questions in this session just to find out a little bit more about who you are and what you're doing here today. And so that is, it's on a separate website. So you can either use a different screen on your computer, or we recommend an auxiliary device so that you don't turn away from our screen, which is the most important place to be at the moment. But if you go to another screen and enter slido.com, SLIDO.com, that's where we're running our polling questions. And it's to get into slido.com, if you haven't been in there previously, you have to enter the code DecemberCPE. So slido.com, DecemberCPE, to answer polling questions. And you can also ask questions of our speakers on that site. And with that, we're going to talk about bridging the generation gap in your firm. And I'm going to introduce our speakers here. I'll just go down the panel and introduce each of them by name, and then they can tell you a little bit about themselves. And as you can see, we all labeled ourselves because this is a generational session, so you'll know who you're hearing from when you hear different things in this session. So to my right is Jeannie Whitehouse, and then Kelly Welter, Lindsay Stevenson, and Garrett Wagner. So if you would each tell us a little bit about yourself.
First of all, I want to make it clear that I am not Gary Boomer, even though this says that I'm Boomer. I am a Boomer, which I think is obvious. I'm a CPA. I work with wineries in the Napa Valley at a CPA firm a couple days a week. I'm a speaker, writer, and like to talk about nerdy stuff.
I am Kelly Welter, and I live in Las Vegas. I'm a partner at a small firm. I am also on the AICPA Women's Initiative Executive Committee with Gail and Lindsay, and I don't really have anything interesting, and that's actually part of being an Xer.
So I'm Lindsay Stevenson. I am a Vice President of Finance and Tax in South Dakota at a bank. I also am the CEO and founder of Origin Evolution, which is a consulting firm that helps CPA firms uncover their purpose. And then I also work with a group called Intend to Lead on leadership development and training, and I am a millennial.
I'm Garrett Wagner, CEO and founder of C3 Evolution Group. We provide innovative solutions to today's CPA firms. And I'm a millennial. I'm proud to be a millennial. One of my favorite passions is talking about understanding millennials. So I'm really happy to be here.
Excellent. And I'm looking at the results of our first survey, which make it look like about half of our audience is baby boomers. And then about 34% Gen X, and then a small number of millennials. So that's
We're
the
bringing up
results
the
coming
rear.
in so far, but I'm sure many of you have not answered yet, so we may change those percentages around a little bit. So anyway, what I'd like to do, first of all, since this is a session about, we promised in the session description that we would give you tips on how to bridge the generational gap in your firm. First of all, I think we'd like to talk about what that generational gap is. So can we try and define conflicts, problems, situations that actually fit into that term generational gap? Anybody want to jump in here
It's like,
first?
I'm not sure I want to talk about
That's the worst part to talk about. No.
Nobody wants to starve.
So what are your experiences where you've seen issues relating to generational situations?
The main thing that I have seen is, especially in the hiring part, within CPA firms, we all tend to have ideas of what the stereotypes and the characteristics are between the different generations, and boomers have ideas about millennials have ideas about boomers, and there's not a very good communication between everyone, and they don't talk. They just go in, they expect, and it causes a lot of problems in hiring. It causes a lot of problems even with your clients, because we've got multi-generations of clients now that are business owners, that are taxpayers. So that lack of communication is a big issue that I see.
I don't think it's a problem that's confined to generational issues. I think we have a tendency to put people in one kind of a box or another, whether it's age or beliefs or race or any other kind of alignment. And by putting people in boxes, we're doing them a disservice. We're not learning about the individual, and we're jumping to conclusions about anybody that we work with. So I think what we're seeing in the age gap situation is just a symptom of a bigger problem of us looking for labels to put to people, and then we treat them accordingly. And that's never been the way it should work. But I think we're finding out in today's world that that's not acceptable anymore. We have to take time to understand what the individuals need and adapt accordingly. And for us old folks with this boomer tag on us, it's hard because we've done it one way for a long time. It's scary. Y'all scare us with your technology and your devices. Y'all whippersnappers, as I said before. Come at us with stuff it's taken us a while to get used to. We raised you to be that way, by the way. Most of us are ones responsible for these crazy millennials. But it requires us to think differently, and that's hard for anybody.
I think it's a two-way street. So what I find interesting is a lot of times I think as a millennial, Garrett, I don't know if you feel this way, but people ask all the time, like, as a millennial, what do you think about this? And you're like, I mean, just as a human, could I have an opinion as a human? Is that something that I can do? So I think it goes to your point, both of you, your point of it's an individual, it's about people. It's not about putting everybody in a box and coming up with a one-size-fits-all solution, right? Because we talk about initiatives and strategies and how to deal with this stuff in the workplace, but the reality is there's never going to be like one answer that fits everything to solve all the solutions. I will tell you from a millennial standpoint, I think just like the tags and the labels just gets to the point where you're almost like, it's almost funny. You're like, I mean, I don't even know how to respond anymore, because I'm like, I've never met a lazy millennial. The people that I hang out with, and I don't know, like I mean, there's lazy people out there, but they're not like just millennials. So I find that's kind of the challenge from a millennial viewpoint is being able to break those labels down.
Well, I mean, we get the same thing from my end of the spectrum. People are talking about how everybody's radical CPAs, and we've been radical for a long time, haven't we, Gail?
Absolutely.
We were radical before it was cool.
We're cutting edge.
And we've been trying to drive change for a long time, and I don't feel like I'm an old,
Especially with the boomer side, very radical over there.
very radical boomer
And then
side.
for us young millennials, it's like, how do we fit into this? And it's like the youngest millennial on the panel. How do we fit in? How do we interact? And you don't want to judge people. Then on the flip side, no one feels like they're part of any generation. Like no matter what generation you're a part of, you're like, well, that label doesn't fit me. You always feel like it doesn't fit you, even though you were born in this age range, you were dead center in the middle of a boomer. Like, no, that defines you. And some things fit and some things don't. It's a general stereotype, but we have human nature to feel like, well, I don't feel like I want to be labeled in that group.
Right.
And some of those things in that group do define you.
I actually preferred it when we were called the Woodstock generation.
Yeah, I like that
I think
too.
we should put that on
That's
our
the way
site.
it is. Let's mark this out.
You want to write? You want to change?
I mean, you can do it.
Somebody give me a pencil.
Yeah, be innovative. Go for it.
Wait, a pencil.
hold on.
Exactly. Y'all know
why
what
would you
pencils are? They had
No, that's why I'm
erasers,
asking, like-
and they were wooden, and they had a little thing, and you could sharpen them. I know.
But
We
why
gotta-
would you pencil it? Use a pen. Why would you pencil it in? Seriously.
Because it might change to something else.
Well, okay, that's true. You could change it to something else. But it's not like this is the first time we've had multi-generations in the workforce.
no.
We've always had it. It's just we're seeing a bigger issue now because times are changing in all industries, in the accounting industry, but in all industries, everything's happening just faster, and it's much more prevalent now.
And the stressors are more
And
prevalent.
the stressors are more.
Yeah.
Well, what is
Okay,
the
hold,
tipping-
wait, hold that thought. We're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment with your first CPE code, and then we'll drive into, we're not going to have a commercial break. We're just going to have a code on your screen. So code appearing on the bottom of your screen. This is your first code for this session. So write down that three-digit code and three-digit number. And, then let's just continue. Okay, where were we? Garrett, you were about to give us
I was
some
about to say
insights.
something about
stressors.
the stressors at work
It's gonna be so good.
are difficult.
It's going to be amazeballs.
Here we go.
Amaze balls.
Use that hashtag.
Okay, we're going to do this. Let's, because I know each of you came with tips on how to solve the problems, even though we haven't talked about all the problems yet. So, because we promised you 10 tips. So let's start with a few of the tips that we have for how we can solve whatever generational gap problem you have in your workplace. Garrett, why don't you start? Because we missed you last time.
All right, we're starting with tip number one. Tip number one, we already talked about it, is really start with understanding and not getting bottled into that like stereotype of millennials are lazy or baby boomers are whatever.
ahead, watch it,
I'm gonna
Garrett.
avoid an instant.
There's no label you can say right now. That's
Pick a
gonna be okay.
stereotype. Move past that and really just try and understand the person you interact with them and what makes them unique. How can you better communicate with them? And just start there and look past those stereotypes.
That's a good tip. Are we gonna go down the row?
Yeah. If you want, we could do that.
We're gonna go CPA style, like right
Yes.
down the row.
Right down, just do a tip.
Rows and columns.
Yeah, so I would say, I would say, from a tip standpoint, to go off Garrett's, dropping the labels. I'm a huge proponent of culture is the reason that we struggle with this stuff. And so from a firm standpoint, if you're looking for organizationally how you can do something different to move the needle on this, I honestly believe that having these conversations and recognizing that you have a multi-generational workforce and they're not going to fit into the stereotype buckets. So don't drive your initiative based on that. Drive your initiative based on your culture. How does your culture make sure that all your people communicate on a regular basis, connect with each other on a regular basis, get to know each other individually so that it's not Garrett the millennial, it's Garrett the badass who can do a lot of stuff, right? So I feel like there has to be something there to create culturally that avenue for you to move forward. So that would be my tip.
My tip is kind of what I mentioned earlier with don't focus on just your employees. You have to look at who you're working with. It is not boomers that are starting the new businesses. It is the millennials that are. There are some. Geez, see, we can't put into boxes.
No stereotypes whatsoever.
No. Okay.
You feel good when you're just squished in the middle right
See,
here?
that's my
like,
point.
so-
That's what the extras are. We're stuck between the middle of both of you. The two crazies. The two crazies. That's why we're shaped like this. Anyway, you have to look at your clients' needs because if you're bringing in more millennial clients, maybe if you're a boomer that does not want to adapt or accept technology and some of the different new ways that things are being done, you're not going to get the clients. You're not going to get new clients. You're not going to get the new business owners. As boomers retire, whether from your firm or just in general, retire in general in life, you're going to have more millennials coming up. You're going to have more millennial clients. You have to look to see what they need. We hear all the time, I'm going to make a little comment stereotype here. Okay. Millennials hate the phone. They hate answering the phone.
Like
they
talking
hate
on the phone.
talking on the phone.
I don't hate the phone.
They love texting on the phone. But a lot of boomers prefer to have that conversation on the phone. I don't either. I personally hate it. But If you call and leave a message on a millennial's, they won't even, first of all, they don't even have their messages set up.
voicemail is full.
It's full.
Yeah.
So you have to consider things like that. You have to consider your clients and your customers and what do they want. And then there's a matter of acceptance that comes with it.
I think that's true. We really have to make a shift from what serves us as firms and accountants to what serves our clients in every case.
Right.
And that includes the generational challenges that we're facing. My tip would be, one of the things we learn as leaders is that we're supposed to come up with solutions. And I think to survive in this world that we're in these days, we need to get rid of that thinking and provide opportunities for people who are struggling with things like the workforce, the timing of when you have to be at the office and wanting to be remote and wanting to do all these things that we're not used to doing. We need to empower those people to come up with their own solutions because we can't solve it. We can't impose a solution that works for us on a group of people that have different requirements than we did. And so I think it's time for us to get the leadership abilities down to the people who really have the insight to solve the problems rather than trying to think we are the all-knowing old people in the tower who have the solution that will work for people who have different needs than we do.
I think that's a good point to get millennials more. How do you get millennials more engaged at work? We'll empower them and say, like, here,
in the leadership.
you solve this problem for yourself. You come up with a solution. Instead of me telling you, here, you need to do this.
Yeah.
Solve this problem, figure it out yourself. I'll
And
run
if
it by
you're-
me and
And if you're the
take
millennial
ownership over it.
coming to leadership with a problem, you need to come with a solution, not just a problem. And that's a big piece of advice for, I think, anybody who's trying to drive change. Don't just present problem after problem. Come up with this, and these are some things we can do to solve them. And I think millennials have those tools and resources that we don't even know about. So I think that's an opportunity.
And it goes to a good thing in our industry as well, of like solving more problems as well. Like, don't just think of the problem, think of the solution to it. And pushing ourselves to think of that solution is a good thing, whether it's a generational thing or a client
Yeah.
service thing. We can think about
As-
more solutions.
That's right. And as accountants, we are trained to spot problems, right? All of us can always identify the negative in any situation, right? I can always find a review point for whatever any of you guys have done, right? And so it's a shift to think
Are you
of
gonna
what
send
are the
those
solutions.
later?
I will send them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Red line comments. Yeah. Yep. Are you going to do that
On
electronically
paper.
or on
No,
paper?
on legal sheet. On legal
checking.
sheet.
I'm
long
just checking.
paper.
Legal
Right.
sheet and a
Yeah.
pencil too, and that thing that you use.
Yeah. I mean,
Get
whatever
no
that is.
respect. We get no respect down here, Gail.
Okay, here's my tip. We hear a lot about what we need to do to embrace the millennials in the workforce and make sure that they're getting what they need in terms of skills and advancement and opportunity. And there's so many of them, they're everywhere. And
Millennials or skills?
I was thinking millennials, but now that you mention it.
So many is like two, right? There's two of us down here, it's a lot.
She's like,
So I mean that seems to be a major conversation: is how can we help the millennials, retain them, keep them in our workforce, and whatever it is, it's how can we blank millennials? And it seems to me,
blank millennial.
I meant like fill in the blank.
That's happening.
This is a family appropriate show.
This is a family appropriate.
So the tip is, or the possible thing to consider is, how about flipping that, and how can we, or what can we do for the older members of the workforce? Okay, bear with me for a minute, because we're all going to be rolling off at some point, whether it's a full retirement or maybe part-time or something. Why not having the conversation of what could be really cool in the workforce for boomers? I mean, maybe easing off to a 4-day work week, or more vacation time, or ways. I mean, not like we're trying to push them out the door, but because they're going to go out the door. So is it just going to slam in the back, or is it going to be how we can still utilize your talents and your skill set with the firm that's growing up behind you as you're easing your way out? And instead of making that a conflict, make it, have the younger members of the firm come up with solutions for how that can best be dealt with. That's my tip.
I think what's interesting to me as well, like when you think about generational gap, I think it's really a life stage gap more than it is a generational gap. I understand that there are differences in the way we were raised, and I recognize that technology is changing. I mean, even for my son's generation, right? Like what they'll be capable of is so much more than what we're capable of. But in reality, really what drives a lot of that tension and conflict is that different life stages, where a millennial is in their life stage of long-term, goals is so different than where an Xer or a boomer is, right? And so like you're thinking about how am I going to lead for the next 20 years? I'm thinking about how I'm going to lead for the next 40 years. And you're thinking about how am I going to transition out of being the leader and I'm ready to do something else.
I am?
I wasn't meaning you.
She can answer that. Let's have
I
her
didn't
answer
mean
that.
you. I know how old you are. I know how you
you
are. But I meant Gen Xers, right? Like of that
Yeah.
transitional.
It's
So I
different.
think you're not talking just about, oh, they use their newfangled technology and they want to
Yeah.
be innovative and whatever. But really, we're trying to figure out, and I'll tell you from personal experience, trying to figure out when you're ready to transition out of the CPA profession, what is it that I'm pushing into the firm that creates revenue streams that are going to pay for you to leave the profession.
a huge
And
problem
I'm
for everybody.
afraid that
Yep.
if we keep doing what we're doing,
It's not gonna be
we're not
there.
going to be able to support that.
And
so
that's
then I'm
all of our
terrified. And
challenges
so then
right
I'm
now.
pushing back all the time. Do something new, just because I want it to be functioning before you leave.
Because if I take all the value out with me, then that leaves nothing behind me for anybody else.
Yes,
so it's a
and-
problem for all of us.
And then you have like, the AI CPA and your state
Yeah.
society is telling you like, it's changing,
Succession
compliance is
plan.
changing, it's dying, you're
Yeah.
doing all that. And I'm like, holy crud, my CPA firm only does compliance. How am I gonna get you retired and have me even have any revenue
Have
left?
anything left, yeah.
And we just aren't good at having the conversation.
Right.
You view it as me
Avoidance,
trying to change
avoidance.
everything,
Yeah.
and I view you as just never wanting to change, and that's not even the conversation. Like that's not even what
Right.
it's about. And
We
so
wanna
I
make
think
sure,
that's
this entity. Well, maybe that's part of what one of the solutions needs to be. We need to look at this differently. How do we protect the organization?
Yeah. Mhm.
And remove ourselves from the individuals and the emotion that's around it. But
Yeah.
we want this thing to live beyond us as individuals. Let's all come together and figure out how to make that happen in
that's
an
been,
unemotional way.
A challenge in the profession forever, that thought
has
process
been.
between
The
like the
succession
silo
part.
firm or the
Yeah.
collection of the unit, and
Yeah.
and some of that is a little bit of a generational difference of the baby boomers were a little more, the function of when they grew up was a little more siloed,
Siloed,
with it overall.
Yeah.
And millennials are much more community focused right now. The
Yeah.
world is very global, connected. We're all part of something.
Yeah.
So there is that even just subtle generational difference, not age, but like we're very globally connected. And
Yeah.
it wasn't because of the connected world we live in. And it is, how do we communicate and get over that problem? But we've got to do it together. Because we
Yeah.
all want the firm to survive.
Well, one of the things you think about that when we started, when I was a partner in a firm, we all had our own book of business, right? That's
Yeah.
how we ran firms.
Eat
So
what you
I
will,
had this
right?
group of clients that I would hoard and not let anybody share. So if I'm trying to leave now and I've been hoarding this client list and nobody knows any of my contacts,
Yeah.
there's no way I can transition easily and effectively
Right.
and hand that over to somebody. So that's one of the big shifts. We're not doing that anymore, hopefully, in most firms.
So you're
it's
saying
easier.
officially you're a hoarder then?
I was,
the,
yes.
the tagline
I'm
here?
admitting it here on air that I
Yeah.
am a
Hashtag
hoarder.
hoarder.
I am a hoarder, yes. A client.
This is the labeling session.
A lot of hashtag labeling.
Don't judge me, hashtag.
It's in the background
Yeah.
hashtagging this all out.
I
as
mean,
you
I
do.
hope that like every hashtag is hidden in the streets.
Me too.
So Kelly, you're in a smaller firm, so
I
I'm
am.
interested to hear, and I know that your partner is a boomer and you're an Xer,
Yes.
and then you have staff that are millennial and probably you even have Zs, right?
We don't
Is
even
that the
know,
next-
and we don't have, actually, they're Xers. Xers, boomers, and millennial that lasted, a very short period of time.
Okay.
So it's difficult. Well, for example, one of the situations we ran into last year with a millennial, and we do primarily compliance, tax returns, small business owners. The millennials, when they're working on a tax return, as tax prep, they want to know why they're doing something.
What a concept.
And the boomers are like, why do you need to know?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Get the work done.
It's like when we first started doing tax returns, you had a data entry sheet, the numbers went in there, and that's what you entered, and it didn't matter why they were there. So it became very tedious, and especially if you're still in an hourly billing process,
Yeah.
they're spending time kind of learning because the millennials want to know why they're doing something. But it's not that they're being annoying. They want the knowledge.
I always wanted to know
They
why.
want to be able to, but that was a big issue last year, especially
That's
when
really
you're
interesting.
very time conscious, of how much time goes into a project.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Billing by the hour. Don't we love it, Ed Class? And
Some of that
somebody-
stuff is like, as millennials, like, what do we want out of work? Like,
Right.
we want to feel important. We want autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Yeah.
And it's really the same thing all our generations want.
Yeah.
We're just a little more willing to like stand up and say, like, no,
Yeah.
I truly, I want this, and I'm willing to stand up for it. Where the past, like, okay, I
just-
want to know why I'm doing this tax prep
Right.
service, and you tell me no, and okay, I'm going to go back to doing it. And I'll ask a couple times and I'll move on.
I have
We
to-
just kind of keep pushing.
I have
but
to
yeah,
reset
olders,
the stage here. I mean, I started out doing tax, and I wanted to know. That's why I went into tax. I wanted to know what the code sections meant and all that stuff. Yes, I'm a nerd. I admit that, a hoarder and a nerd. But we had the ability to see where the data ended up when I did it. We did the manual return.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I knew that if I didn't put this in the right box, because I was writing it in the box, what it would mean on the bottom line. Whereas
that with
today,
pencil or
it's just
pen?
a bunch of invisible boxes.
Pencil and pink
And
pearl.
pencil.
Yeah, Pentel and pink
Pencil.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a blue
Branded.
pencil.
They were branded.
A blue pencil that didn't show up on the photocopy.
Yep.
And
And
we
red,
did
yep.
pencil.
See,
So-
and then you jump to my generation.
where you've never seen the output.
we didn't put
You
we didn't see the output.
never saw the
No,
output.
you put everything in
So it means
and somebody
nothing.
else saw it.
It's
Right.
even more
Then you get to the millennials.
mind-blowing and mind-numbing.
Then you get to the
I mean, I wouldn't
millennials and they
ever
don't
want to
see
do that.
either.
They
What?
don't
Right,
see
but you get to the millennials and they don't
just
see
wave
either
their
because
hand
now
and
you
then-
have
Yeah, there's
tax software that literally takes the
the
W-2 and,
numbers.
the,
Yeah.
and
Why
just
are
puts
we
it
still
in.
putting them in boxes? This has got to be the
Pivot
question.
to like now the millennials, the software's going to do the input, and
Yeah.
then they're back to the output of okay, now the computer's
What
done
does
the
this
input,
mean?
and I've got to like
I
take
need to
time to
know what
look
it
at it and
means.
see like what
And
does
I
the
have
output
no
mean?
context,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but they've got to learn that context.
Well,
and we've got
yeah.
to teach them like here's what that
Yeah.
means because there's no value in them just putting W2 box one, W2 box one,
box two,
Right.
yeah,
and
it's
go.
ridiculous.
But yeah, that push to understand what does the output mean,
Yeah.
and that's going to get excited more than the input anyway. So
But
push
we
them.
have to have
Push
new
Lindsay to do
skills
that on her tax
we
preps.
we haven't developed the skills to train well either.
No.
Okay.
No.
And so now you're asking me to become a communicator when I've been a technician.
I thought you were a communicator.
Well, I'm talking
She
about
is.
my group. My group I'm representing. I'm wearing the boomer flag, and that's a huge, huge shift.
yes.
Just learn it for yourself, like I did.
And they want to communicate
Yeah.
so much so.
They do.
They, meaning you and
Yeah.
like this.
We're going to do a quick break again. Not a break, but just a break to mention that your second CPE code is appearing on the bottom of your screen. So be sure to write that down. You're going to use that in conjunction with the first one and with the one we haven't given you yet to get your CPE for this session. And then we want to remind you to go over to slido.com, slido.com. And the entrance code is December CPE, and we have a question up on the poll board about conflicts, generational conflicts that you are seeing in your firm today. And we've already got some that are coming in here, so I'm going to read some of these. Okay, ready? Okay.
Sitting down for these.
Yeah, we ready?
These millennials.
Just start off real strong.
I like dive right in. Thank you guys. That's good.
Millennials seem to want constant feedback on their performance. And boomers, these boomers, don't seem to think that feedback is necessary. So, millennials, what do you think about that part about the boomers? And we'll tell you what we think about what they say about the millennials.
Well, I think to start with, let's talk about just feedback in any job of where it involves a skill. Feedback is important.
Yeah,
If you want to get people in your office to be better at it and to take more ownership over their work and engage them, feedback is important. So generational thing aside, it's important. We've never done a good job as a profession. And yeah, the millennials are asking for more, but we didn't invent the idea of feedback. We're just kind of saying, yeah, I read it. I went to college. I learned the importance of feedback. I read about it online. I hear it. Yeah, I want that. I want to be better at my job every day. Like we both feel that of like we want to be better at our job every
I
day.
think we all can agree.
I
We all
think
feel that
it's
way.
And we want that outside
Everybody
input
does.
to do it.
Right. So if I asked you as Xers and Boomers, if I said, on the first day, the first month of your career, would it have been helpful and meaningful for you to get feedback on a weekly basis of your performance on the engagements that you worked on? Would you have wanted that? Sure.
I got 90 review points on every single tax return that I did. I got feedback every hour.
Okay.
Are we talking positive feedback?
no,
or
no,
negative
no,
feedback?
just
I got
feedback.
feedback all the time. This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong.
So I think that, to me, like when we say things like millennials want constant feedback and the boomers think that you should be able to figure it out, the reality is we all wanted that in the first 2 or 3 years of our careers, regardless of what generation we're part of. But as you get further into the generation, right now my son's generation is entering the workforce as the Zs, and I'm like, oh my, they want me to do this? I'm like, okay, but I wanted that too, right? Like, I'm just not that age group
always the
anymore.
case.
So I do think that that's part of it. The other thing is feedback is not review comments. And so I just
Exactly.
want to be clear,
Exactly.
when millennials, I think, say we want feedback,
That's not
they are
it.
not asking you for more review comments.
Exactly.
They are,
Check this box.
that's what we think, yes, yeah. You know,
Well, that's
like,
important. Like we want to be
Yes.
technically correct.
Yes.
More
But
than
you
just
need
like
to have guidance.
But realistically, like, am
Yeah.
I getting better? Right?
Yeah.
Like giving me review comments that say like, here's, you missed this box, you didn't
It's a
check this, you
terrible
didn't
way
do.
to manage
That's okay.
people.
That's a great way for me to learn technical skills. But as a human, am I developing in the way that makes sense for you? If
Yeah.
I never hear that until my annual review, and then it's been a year of me doing crap and you don't tell me for 12
Yeah.
months, and then you're like, I don't know why she can't figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the problem.
Okay, here's a problem though, and it's inherent to, I'm going to stereotype the entire generation. It's inherent to accountants. Is
Yeah.
that it's hard to go tell somebody to their face what you think of them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's
Especially if it's bad.
well, yeah, and and the opposite. I remember having pressure to not give great reviews to my staff when I was at Deloitte.
Because we have a bell
Not,
curve.
not to name a firm.
Because there's only so
a
many
bell
people that
curve,
can
that's
get
right.
onto the
And
partner
they're
track,
only
so
one-
don't promote.
Exactly. Yeah.
We don't want to set false hopes.
Yes.
No, you can't give them all top scores because then they won't have anything to improve on.
It's just
Right.
mind-boggling.
Okay,
what
so
we do
that
to
was
people.
weird, but
Yeah.
okay. Okay, let me. I tell you what. I appreciate the comments we're getting on Slido, and we're going to read some more of those. But I also want to post another thing up there to make sure that we get to that. I'm going to ask for you guys. We'll do boomers first, and then millennials, and no, boomers, then Gen X, then millennials. I want you to give. I haven't forgotten Gen X. We'll start with boomers. I want you to give a one-word description of what you think of when you think baby boomers. So post those up on Slido.com, hashtag December CPE, and see what kind of words we get. And you see these
I don't
coming
think
in.
I want to know.
I don't know if you're going to want to
Skype
know.
wine.
Bold.
Skype wine.
Are you gonna hashtag it? Hashtag in these
There
phones?
should be a positive one and a negative one
Yeah, no,
because
I
there's
think we're
two
gonna-
sides of everything.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see what words come in. But meanwhile,
Yeah.
we can continue our conversation
So
about
I want to know, I want to hear, what is it we should be doing differently, us boomers? What do we need to know? What are we missing? How can we make it better for people? I mean, one of the things that I'm at the phase where I really want to be in a place where I can bring people up. I want to help speakers come up and get on main stage. I want to bring people in my firm up to take on new opportunities. What do we need to know in order to help you guys achieve your goals?
Share your fails.
Oh, no, I'm not telling anybody about that.
I think, and to
Yeah,
your point for what you're doing in New York, like, I think this idea of being able to say, like, I'm totally going to be vulnerable with you and tell you what absolutely didn't work.
Yeah, well, I got
Like,
a lot
to,
of that.
to me, because we can see what works. I mean, I can watch you and be like, Jeannie kicks butt, like, because she did that. Like, she totally killed it. And oh my God, Gail, I saw you do this and it was so amazing. Like, I can
Yeah.
see your wins. Because wins are easy to share, right? So
Yeah,
everybody
easy to
sees the
share.
wins. But
Yeah.
I didn't see the 15 times you were told no
Yeah.
when you put this idea that you were so in love with and then you
Yeah.
kept doing it. I didn't see that. So I'm like, oh, well, she's just better. She's just good and I'm just not good.
Well, I think,
So-
yeah, well, that's really useful because I think we all assume that it's just easy and obvious and nobody wants to hear about that stuff.
No, we want to hear your fails.
I think
And not to rub it in, make you get better. I mean, not to be like,
I think one of the
What an
things
idiot you are.
one of the things you need to remember is you created them. Okay?
I know, I keep people, my friends
So,
keep telling me that's your fault. Your kids are ruining our lives.
seriously, it's all your fault.
I know it. We taught them to be better than we were.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. So
I know
one
it.
of the things, and I've talked about this before. You say they're lazy, they don't want to work, they want to
say
go
that.
have lives. Okay, boomers say that. They think of them as being lazy. They don't want to work all the long hours. We, Xers and boomers, have
Saw
spent
us.
a gazillion dollars on trying to find balance. Trying to find, we created work-life balance, trying to figure it out. We buy all the books, we
Yeah.
attend the sessions, we
Yeah.
take classes, we get coaches, all to tell us how to do this.
Yeah.
Okay? So now they're coming in and they've
And
seen
trying to-
this
and
and they're
doing it.
trying to establish it right from the very
Yeah.
beginning, and we're burying them for it.
Well, that's what's happening. We're
It's
still giving them the same crap that we
sabotage.
didn't want to do either.
Exactly.
I know it. We
So
haven't
that's a
changed the work
huge-
experience.
Right. So you say what you
Yeah.
want and you don't want, but when they
Yeah.
accept that, it's not acceptable.
That's right.
It really isn't.
I know it. Well, it's okay when I say it.
When you say it, so
Yeah, feeling positive.
yeah, I feel really good. Like, I feel like you're just like, you guys jump on the sword and we'll look amazing over here.
Right.
I have like no responsibility for any of us. It's your fault. Whatever we do, your fault.
And we'll-
We got some negative millennial stereotypes going on over here. You know,
Yeah.
Non-responsibility, huh? You're just like, it's all you down
It's
there.
you guys.
We're going to
you
get to
guys.
that when we ask for the single words to describe the millennials.
But again, give us some guidance. Show us what it is you want from us so that we can deliver. That's what we need,
And
I
I
think,
think
is
on that,
some help.
My
Help us
idea
get
is, like,
there for you.
generational and non-generational, like any kind of like succession, whether it's a CPA firm or business, is at some point you've got to be comfortable and more comfortable and push yourselves to let go of control. I'll be,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not going to
Yeah.
do this. And that's not
That's tough.
a CPA thing firm.
It
It's
is
not a
tough.
generational thing. It's just
Yeah.
a transition thing. And the baby boomers are going
Yeah.
through that. And you've got to push yourself every day. But, okay, I'm going to let go a little bit more of control and not like, this might be 90% right versus 100. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Or this might not be the color pen I would choose to use.
Watch it now.
Hey, we're accountants. We like our pen colors.
Yeah,
You know,
we do.
like,
Yeah.
but it's okay. Like it's red and not green, or it's blue and not yellow. But it's okay, and just be part of that transition and let it go, and be okay with that. Let go of that.
So I think it's
that should be on our
yeah.
tips list.
Yeah.
It should be. And I think it's not just control, but it's the information. We also have to be comfortable sharing this knowledge that's here. We don't have those processes. We don't have a succession plan written down. We don't have career paths defined in our firms for people.
And why would you really want to share that information with the people that work for? Like, why should someone that works in an organization
weird.
understand
Yeah, where
how
does
that
that go?
organization works
Yeah.
and operates and how it's doing? It's
Yeah,
such a
it's-
crazy, like,
Common sense.
Yeah.
You guys are so demanding.
yeah. But part of it is we grew up in a very open information age now. Like,
did.
information is now suddenly free
Transparency.
Yeah.
and everywhere. And on my phone, I can find out almost anything, even salaries, and it wasn't that way 20 years
Yeah.
ago.
No.
But firms are still like that, and like it's closed. Like
There's still a protected
Yeah.
environment that we have that we hang on to.
you do not
And
need to
it's-
know how this firm operates and works.
Yeah.
You just need to keep
Yeah,
putting
till
things
you
in
get
that
to
box.
whatever level. Right? Like it's like
Exactly.
if you're in the inner circle, then we'll let you know
Right.
what's going on. So
Plan on buying it someday, plan
Yeah.
on stepping into the ownership phase, but we're not going to tell you what it is now for you
Yeah.
to be able to plan
And
for
what
that.
we're
It's
saying
like
in
buying
the
a car.
long
Of like,
run.
we're gonna let you buy a car.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you how much to pay. I'm not gonna show you the car. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna take your money and they'd be like, here you go.
and
Yeah.
you're gonna have to trust me. The car's amazing.
Exactly. Don't read reviews. Don't read any reviews.
We're counting amazeballs in the audience. That would be the second time.
4
so
times,
drink
you said.
up.
I
Four
said-
times.
A drinking game.
I know that's going to be one of the descriptions when we ask for word descriptions of millennials. Okay. All right. I don't know if you can see this on the screen or not. However, I'm going to just tell you what some of the great words are that we're hearing for describing baby boomers. I've seen old several times.
Oh no.
I did not write that. with
I
my
did
hands.
I know. We're like we're not
We're
even
watching
on.
your hands up here. you
Yeah, yeah,
guys.
totally.
Okay. Workaholics,
Yeah.
perfectionists,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay. I'm good with that one.
Not.
Non-change, poor communicators, loyal,
That's a good one.
established. That's up here a few times.
That's like the experience.
Technology challenged. I think that depends. Solid.
They're like a solid mass, like they're not a liquid, they're not a
Like
gas.
70s, like that's solid,
Yeah,
man.
like this.
Like
Nose,
heavy 70s, what I'm thinking.
nose grinder. Retired.
Somebody's like,
You know
I
what?
wish.
I
I
can-
wish.
With each one of those, I can tell you which generation put that word
down.
up.
Yeah. Wisdom.
That's a boomer.
Old school.
That one,
Right?
Old school.
Leader of the pack. Okay. 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 Now this is a little bit of inside information. I know we have to have some members of our 40 under 40 posting in this because
what
we're
do they call
getting
us?
the aging fleet.
Aging fleet. Isn't that horrible? I don't want to be the aging
little-
fleet.
It's not too bad.
40 under 40 inside joke. What did you say?
So, I've got to add a boomer word, which is, threatened, because we're wondering
Yeah,
how
do
long
you
we're going to
can you
be
put it on the
relevant.
screen? And no, we don't have the screen on. So, but apparently it's on your screen, so you can see this coming in. So.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
you're
I
okay.
can't
You're
see
posting. Oh, okay.
right.
It's
My
supposed to
old
be in a word
eyes.
cloud, but that's all right. This is great.
I love
Okay.
seasoned. Like your
Seasoned.
food.
Seasoned.
Like your
All right,
food.
we're gonna go. You
Salt
can turn
and
that off.
peppered.
We're going to go to the next one,
Somebody else's
which
turn.
is Gen X. So we want one-word descriptions of Gen X.
To me, that category is very hard to pinpoint.
is.
And we don't have
So-
as clear a...
I
I'm
think
not.
that'll probably come out in our
Yeah,
one-word
we're-
descriptions.
I am not going to. I'll probably throw out words that people will put up, but we went to a session, I think it was at Engage, where they did the ABCs, and when they were describing, they gave the song for each generation.
Oh, I like that.
Mine was satisfaction. Can't get no satisfaction. We cannot. We feel like we're always having to settle. That is where, and we're also the tiniest generation.
Yeah.
So we feel like there's this huge, you guys have a gap, you and you, and we're kind of stuck in the middle, just floundering.
We have a gap.
You have a gap
between
But you
us
need to
and
be
us.
and I am the, we
You're
have to
the
act.
You're in the trough.
Yes, we have to
You
act
are
as
the
the
generational
bridge.
gap.
Yes, we are. We
Wow.
are the gap. We have to act as a bridge to get the two of you to talk. I can also talk with you. I can also talk with you. I change my communication with each one of you. I change the way I dress if I'm presenting to a boomer group versus a millennial group. We can do that. So we're like this. We can do that. We can do anything.
Than us older.
We probably wear more hats than anybody
Yeah, you've
because
learned to be adaptable.
and our generation currently right now are dealing with, we have young kids and we also have parents that are aging that we're taking care of.
That's true.
So
you are
we are the
bridging
filler.
both.
Yeah, we are
Wow.
the absolute filler.
That's
Well,
very.
We
that's
drink
very
a lot.
interesting, though.
Part of this.
yeah.
I mean,
That
I'd say
is
like
most alcohol
it's like
of
an
any
Oreo
group.
sandwich, and you're the middle white part.
We buy the most alcohol of any group.
Yeah, we need to.
Everybody
It's
else
tough to be you because the Gen Xers just kind of got lost.
Thank you.
It's very
Will you
hard.
tell my children that?
Sure. What's that hashtag? Tough to be you.
There you go.
Well, yeah, because the Gen Xers were the biggest generation by size and
Yeah.
the biggest generation by GDP spending forever, and then suddenly
Xers?
baby
Before the
boomers.
boomers.
The boomers were, and then it went
were.
from the boomers to the biggest is the millennials, and the biggest
Yeah.
spenders is the millennials.
Yeah.
And Gen X never the
Got it.
marketing never focused
Never
on
at the
them. No
top.
one ever truly paid deep attention.
We
but
were
you serve a vital
born-
role.
We were born in Vietnam. Okay, most of us were born in the Vietnam period. So if you, and that's what's most interesting, if you look at the generations, I mean, all four of my kids, they're 22 down to 12, and they're all technically Zs. And I can see when you look at what's happened in their lives, what's impacted their lives, we can't understand it, but because we haven't had to experience and grow up in, a time of, you don't know if you're safe, you don't, you have all this exposure. You can't trust anyone. I didn't have that in my generation. We were just poor and went through, this early 70s. I mean, come on, look at our clothes and the music. I mean, it's
Interest
just-
rates, 20%.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
disco and gas
And
prices.
disco, who would
Yikes.
ever?
Oh, yeah. You own that. You own that. All right, here we go. Gen X.
Gil's enjoying this one.
Okay. Highly adaptable.
Oh.
There you go.
Smart working. We can go ahead and post this if you want.
I love those. Let's not post the
yeah.
negative ones.
Yeah, look at our word cloud over there for the old
yeah.
people one. Okay, let's move
Is
to
that
the
old?
Gen-
Is that the biggest word there? Old.
Oh, did we get the cloud up?
Yeah, that's the boomer.
Yeah,
That's the
that's the
boomer.
big
That's the
one.
boomer cloud. Let's
Okay.
see the Gen X. What
All
else
right,
you got
cool.
for Gen
So sorry,
X?
yeah.
We've
All right,
got
we're trying to-
transient, unhappy,
Look at mist.
adaptable,
Wow, that's interesting.
forgotten, middle, intelligent,
I have middle child syndrome.
diverse. I think that
The
meant
Gen Xers are the middle
diversified.
child of the three generations.
That's really interesting.
Misunderstood, struggling, skipped over.
I want to cry
I
right now.
know it.
that's sad.
Resourceful,
See?
tech savvy,
Oh,
innovative,
look at innovative. Those are the Xers.
Go
Like, we're
Xers.
so innovative.
wonder
So the
years.
question I have for Gen X is, did you have a cell phone? When did cell phones, did they come into being during your youth? Or
I
what
had
point?
a big block cell phone, I think,
What
that I
age?
got in college.
Wow, okay,
That
so
was,
you didn't start with a cell phone.
No, we didn't start with a cell phone. I remember sitting in like computer labs I went to Oregon State, go Beavs.
Okay.
Sorry. We had computer labs. Nobody had their own computers. You had a big
Yeah.
computer lab where QuickBooks, we still worked with DOS, but QuickBooks had just really been introduced, so that's what we first started working on. And it was at a time when literally somebody would have a flip of a computer screen and everybody yells save, Everybody has to save your work because you're going to
clicking
lose
the button.
everything. So it was like
we go.
the first, it was
Yeah.
the first
Oh,
of
look
it.
at the who question mark. That one, that just breaks my heart. That's horrible.
Unknown.
But it means that at the age of 46, I can still figure out what I want to do when I grow up.
Opportunities.
Wait, can I not still figure that out too? I'm still trying to grow up.
You're
you a hall
aging
pass.
fleet. You're
Just get some new tires and
maintenance
shut up.
mode
Yeah.
for you right now.
So you're defined by what as millennials? What's your defining moment in your?
Well, and let's make
We'll
it in
get
the form
that
of a tip because we want to get some
Oh,
more
yeah,
tips in
tip.
here.
I think also
tips.
before we get to that, it's interesting. Every time we look at these generational differences and you ask people to define other people, it is almost always negative. Like,
Always negative.
you know, and that's just the way we are as human beings. It's always negative towards the other generation.
It's true.
Yeah.
All right, and speaking of which, I'm going to put up the poll now for let's describe millennials in one word.
I'm gonna have to like thick skin.
Okay.
Just let me put that on real
All
quick.
right,
to
we'll
put-
let that
we've
feed
all
up
had
while
to.
you guys come up with some more tips.
I know,
Yeah,
it can't be any
tips.
worse.
Okay.
I would say, you know, part of the challenge is, and I think you touched on it earlier, so I think from a tip standpoint, the communication, to be able to communicate with someone based on what you know about them is how we actually start bridging that gap. So not just, I mean, we do need to know people as individual people, but I do think there's influences from a generational standpoint of recognizing like, hey, when you first started this job, you were doing it on paper, right? And you were using color-coded pens that were, you always used blue for internal reference and always used red for external reference, and there's all these rules that went on.
Duh.
So, right? Which I know because I was trained by a boomer, right? So, but there's value in recognizing where we were and where we've come from and how, as a profession, in 30 years, what's happened inside this profession is mind-blowing. But even more so in the last 5 years, what's happened inside this profession. So
Every
recognizing that and then
Yeah.
saying like, hey, how do I communicate with Jeannie and Gail and Kelly and say, what's important to you in your value system of how you grew up? If face-to-face communication is important to you because that's how you developed, then I need to go out of my way as a millennial to have discussions with you on a face-to-face basis, but build the trust between us so that we can start communicating the way I like to communicate electronically. But I have to build the trust first. I have to be willing to say, like, I know this about you. So I think from a tip standpoint, look at your communication style and be willing to develop your communication to make sense to the people you're communicating with. Be okay with sending them a text. Right? If you're trying to get to a millennial, send them a text. I guarantee you they will respond within 15 minutes
But it
unless
can't
they're in
be
a
too
meeting.
long.
No, like 12 words. is the
12
max.
words.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
12 words is a lot of words. Can we,
That's why I said the max.
can we
That's like
circle
the
back to
max.
like,
Like
5?
And not full
seven.
vowels either, not full words either.
Yeah.
So I want to add to that tip another tip, which I think this goes beyond generational differences, which is communication styles vary from human to human. And if your firm is not doing some sort of behavioral assessment, you are missing an opportunity because we all communicate differently based on how we are wired as individuals. And we use a tool called DISC for assessment. So we understand you're wired this way, I'm wired this way, and this is how we meet in the middle so that we both get what we need out of this conversation. We use that with clients, we train them, we understand how they're wired so that we can communicate in a style that works for all of us. And that is just one component of what we need to do, and then we can consider some of the generational differences as well versus which device. But first of all, it's how do you need to get information from me to feel like you've gotten what you need, and then which device do I use most effectively to communicate with you. We should know that for clients and for each other.
And it's a good pivot out of what we do now because it's not a technical thing. It's like we have to invest time in learning, like, what is DISC?
Yeah.
You know, what are the 4 quadrants of DISC? How do I
Yeah.
quickly assess someone? Where do they fit in those?
How
If I
can
work
I
with
observe
someone,
behavior?
I know where they are. I know how to modify my behavior to fit them. And that goes past the generations, and you're
That's
absolutely
right.
right. But it's one of those non-accounting skills we need to learn to be better of.
That's right.
And DISC is a very simple, good way to do that.
That's right. A very effective tool that changes the way things happen.
Okay, a couple things. First of all, someone asked me, and I should have said this right from the start. I didn't. I apologize. But someone asked what the year cutoffs are for the different
Yeah, that's
age
a good
groups. So
point.
I'm sorry, I didn't say it earlier. I just assumed. Okay, we start with what some people call the traditional generation, the silent generation, the greatest generation, the World War II generation, anyway, 1928 to 1945, and some of them are still in the workforce. So we haven't talked about them at all because they're silent.
They're silent.
Even more silent than the Gen X.
So
They are
See,
something special.
but you're still
Okay,
not first. I think is the
moving on.
moral.
Anyway.
Baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. And if you're on the cusp of any of these, you can, some people like to claim they're in the other one. But anyway, 46 to 64 boomers. Gen X, 1965 to 1980. Millennial, 1986 to 1996. And Gen Z right now, the oldest Gen Z is 21 years old.
Okay, hold on. We skipped 6 years.
Yeah,
People
then-
who were born from 81 to
Oh,
86
then it's
don't
80.
go anywhere.
I thought those were like
It's
truly
80,
forgotten.
sorry.
Like,
81
we like
to
really
80.
don't
I'm going to
exist.
count that.
There's like
81.
Oh my gosh, we
81
don't
to
have a
96.
generation.
Make
Each
that
one is
81
like
to
16
96.
years.
Yeah, Gail, you just cut us out completely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
She's like, you're not even
just
generational.
God.
You're just people.
Okay, all right. I'm being given a code that I need to take a break here. Before I do, I'm going to say one more thing real quickly. We got a message that I love. It says, "This is a fun group. See, generations can get along and laugh."
We do rock.
Okay, we're gonna do a really brief commercial break, and then we're gonna do our third CPE code, and then we'll show you the word cloud for the millennials.
We all know business moves fast. So why let paper slow you down? Receipt Bank is the world's favorite paperless bookkeeping platform, connecting accountants, bookkeepers, and small businesses. Stop wasting time storing receipts and bills and manually typing in data. With Receipt Bank, you can send and receive records instantly in a way that suits you, or let us do it for you. We accurately read all the data and store it online, ready when you need it. You can integrate with your choice of accounting system or export the data to your desktop software. It's easy automation that you control. What you do with the time you save is up to you. Grow your business, save on admin costs, or maybe just get your evenings back. Receipt Bank. Work smarter, grow faster.
All right, we are back, and we are going to display your third CPE code for this session, 3-digit number. Please write that down so that you can get your CPE credit for this session. And then we're also going to display the Millennial Word Cloud, which should be coming up on your screen here momentarily. Here it is, entitled. That was the biggest one I saw here too. Yeah.
Self-centered and spoiled. Oh my gosh.
Self-centered and spoiled.
Oh my God.
Was this specifically how they're rating the two of us after these 49 minutes?
I doubt that.
Just very
Keep in
specific.
mind,
Yeah.
Based on your representation so far today, that's what they came up with.
Keep in mind, our
not
first
at all.
question asked about how many, and we had like a great percentage of our audience was boomers,
It's
so
boomers. That's
they're
us.
judging. I think.
Judging.
I feel
That would have been a good one for a good word for boomers is judging.
Okay, so we're going to go through a few more tips to make sure we got up to 10. I'm sure we're there already, but we'll get a few more in here before we wrap up this session. So,
I'll go. One of the things that you need to focus on is sharing and talk to people. Communication keeps coming up, but ultimately there are parts of the millennials' attributes, ideas, favorite things that the boomers love. The biggest group on Facebook are 55 to 66 years old.
Well, the millennials are all gone from Facebook.
Well, they're gone from Facebook, but social media in general.
Yeah.
Think about how many of us got here by pushing a button on a phone because we ordered our Uber. How many, all of us did. So there are aspects that the boomers love about the millennials, and there are aspects that the millennials love about the boomers. Communication is key, and I think sharing is a big part of it. Just because something, I guess this would be the main tip, don't be stuck with Sally. Don't be stuck with, we've done it this way because always. So we're not going to change because they may have a way better way of doing it. Way better idea, way better processes. But then you guys, see, this is the bridge thing I'm talking about. You guys are still, it is counseling. Maybe that should have been one of our words.
Yeah.
There are things that they have gone through and experienced and seen that you don't have an understanding for because you haven't been there yet. So talk amongst each other.
Can we all just get
Peace.
along?
Can we all just get along?
That's part of the frustration, though. I think we remember all the things that we tried and failed, and so we have a tendency to shoot you down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can have tried that and it didn't work for just about everything you've done because we've been here so damn long that we've done a lot of stuff and badly in many cases.
Yes.
But now we have technology that changes everything that
That's
you've
right.
tried,
And
right?
so we
that's
have
like
to
the fun.
rethink it.
You have to rethink it, but
Yeah.
on that same note, yes, you had to take you had to wait, we sat for our paper paper exam, and we walked uphill in stilettos for 40 miles to take it
Both
with
ways.
a pencil. Both ways with a blindfold backwards.
Didn't even fill in the circle.
Didn't even
on
fill
that
in.
CPA
Oh, I had
exam.
circles. Okay, I had circles. Yeah. Anyway, but I totally lost my train of thought.
Well, I'll wrap up then, final tip, and it applies to all generations, and it's important to your point of purpose of engage the whole firm of any generation in your vision and purpose. And truly, as a firm, have a purpose that you exist beyond just what I work here to do a tax return. Really understand and think about that. Why do we as a firm exist?
Yeah.
Make sure everybody knows that, because once you all know that, that's going to engage everybody in regards to generations. And teams that are more engaged are more involved and more communicating and they're more open, and it fosters everything. So start at the top, really focus on why you're there. What are you doing? And share that with everybody. Don't hold it inside. Don't meet as the partners once a year and say, here's our purpose, and then put a memo on people's desks and be like, well, that's, say it every day. Make it part of what you do and entrench in your culture and embrace that. And it's going to go across the generations.
I would just say to ask your people too. So it starts with you saying, here's our purpose, but I think to follow
They need to
through
be
with that to say,
engaged.
but what is yours? And are we all doing this together? And then how does our purpose change if your purpose changes? So I think I love that. Going through and developing that purpose is so huge.
Yeah.
Little maze balls tended on.
It's totally
Something that's missing, I think, in all firms and all companies is respect. And it's not, we say respect our elders, but sometimes it's the elders that aren't respecting the millennials. I mean, we talk about, it was so much harder for you. That's where I was going with the uphill snow story. It was harder for you to do certain things, but if you're a parent today, it is so much harder. They are dealing with so many more things. I have people that tell me all the time, I would hate to be a parent and raising children right now. I would hate to be a CPA that's having to go through all this and learn and change so fast.
Yeah.
So everybody's had it hard.
The expectations are great, I think, right now for parents.
Yeah. Okay, and I've got one last really quick tip, and then we're out of here, and that is to try and be goal-based in your firm. No matter what age you are, the firm itself should have goals, and they should be somewhat long-term goals. So, for example, if you look at the calendar and realize that this summer, the 4th of July is on a Thursday, and your goal is, how can I get that Friday off? That's not really the long-term goal we're talking about. But if you can all agree on where you want to be 5 years from now, and then start working together to think of innovative ways to get there, it's gonna draw you all together, and it's gonna keep you on the same path no matter what age you are. All right, so thank you so much. This was a great panel. We could have gone all day. I think that was a comment we made when we were preparing some of the notes for this. Thank you so much, and we will be back at the top of the hour, and we're gonna talk about gadgets and gifts. So that's gonna be kind of a fun session since it is sort of gadget gift season. So we'll see you at the top of the hour.